Hello learners, welcome to Drishti CUET undergraduate program and I am your mentor Shashank welcoming you all in today's session. Learners, in today's session I will be discussing with you the topic of Revolt of 1857, and this topic of Revolt of 1857, it is one of the most important topics from Indian history because what I have seen in CUET UG examination, especially in GAT section, and you will find minimum 2 questions from this topic, sometimes 1 and sometimes 2 questions from this topic. Other than this, if you have opted history domain, then around 4 to 5 questions that comes from this topic. So last year around 4 to 5 questions that came from this particular topic of Indian history in the history domain. So let's start the session, and today I will be discussing with you the topic of Revolt of 1857. Guys, whenever we read about Revolt of 1857 in English, there is no confusion, but in Hindi, you will find that there is a confusion that in some places it is written 1857 का विद्रोह या 1857 का विद्रोह, and somewhere it is being written as 1857 की क्रांति. So before I should proceed, first of all we will discuss what exactly is the revolt, and then we will proceed with the topic. Now guys, first of all let's discuss what exactly is the revolt. Now revolt, it is a political situation guys. It is a situation where there is no political change. So revolt, what it is, actually it is a situation where there is no political change. So the revolt is a situation that led to no political change, that is called revolt. So no political change that happens in revolt. So the things remain as it is, or there is some slight change that does not affect too much, or there is some slight change that does not affect too much. Now what happened after revolt of 1857? So after revolt of 1857, what happened? The rule of British East India Company came to an end. So rule of British East India Company, this is also written 𝗕EIC. So rule of British East India Company came to an end and power was transferred to British Crown. And British Crown means that now the British monarch will lead India. So now British monarch, British Crown means British king or queen will lead India. So now India will come under British Crown. That means that British king or queen will lead India. So guys, do you think there is any type of political change or a major political change that happened? So can you witness any major political change? Political change in the history of India? Any major political change? Do you witnessed any major political change? So your answer will be no. So technically there was no political change. British East India Company was also associated with Britain and British Crown is also associated with Britain. So you will find that there is no major political change happen. Both BEIC, that is British East India Company, and British Crown, they were associated with Britain. So both of them, they were associated with Britain. So it is the revolt, it is not the revolution. Now guys, if India could have become independent, then we can say that it was a revolution, but that did not happen after revolt of 1857. So there was no major change after revolt of 1857. What happened? The earlier India was being ruled by British East India Company, that means company government was ruling, and now India came directly under British Crown, and Queen Victoria at that point of time was Queen of England. She was declared Empress of India. So Queen Victoria, she ruled from 1837 till 1901, was declared Empress of India. So Queen Victoria, she was declared Empress of India. So technically guys, you will find that there is no major change that happened after 1857. So the event that happened in 1857 was a revolt. It was not a revolution at all. So the event that happened after 1857, that was a revolt. It was not a revolution. So I hope guys, is that clear to all of you? I hope it's clear to everyone. Then do let me know. Then we'll move to the next thing. So I hope it is clear to all of you that the event that happened in 1857 was a revolt. It was not a revolution, because after 1857 there was no major political change that happened in Indian political system. I hope it is clear. Now let's come to the next thing, that is the important pointers that is related to revolt of 1857. So let's discuss the important pointers. First of all guys, the British Empress or the British Queen during revolt of 1857, British Queen or British Empress during revolt of 1857, that was Queen Victoria. And Queen Victoria, she ruled from 1837 till 1901. So she ruled from 1837 till 1901. Now guys, the British Prime Minister who was the British Prime Minister during revolt of 1857, so that was Lord Palmerston, and he was the British Prime Minister from 1855 till 1858, and the British political system is democratic monarchy. So the British political system that you can find, it is democratic monarchy. Democratic monarchy means that the head of the state is nominated, whereas the government is elected by the people. So the head of the state is nominated, where the government is elected by the people. So that is democratic monarchy. Next is the Governor General of India during the revolt of 1857, that was Lord Canning. So Lord guys, that was not the name, that was the title which was given to them. So Lord was not the name of Canning. So Lord was just the title that was given to them because they were the highest authorities in India. So Lord Canning, and he was the Governor General from 1856 to 1862, and he was the last Governor General and first Viceroy of India. Last Governor General and first Viceroy of India was Lord Canning, and he was the Governor General from 1856 till 1858. He was the Governor General, and from 1858 till 18 was the Viceroy. Was the Viceroy. Now, guys, you heard there two terms: Governor General and Viceroy. So, who is a Governor General? Governor General, guys, he was the highest authority of British East India Company in India. So the highest authority of British East India Company in India was called Governor General, and this Viceroy is formed from two terms. One is voice, means on behalf of, and Roy guys, it is a French word, means king. So one who rules on behalf of king is called Viceroy. So one who rules on behalf of king is called Viceroy. So one who rules on behalf of king is a viceroy. So voice, it is a Latin word, whereas roy, it is a French word. So voice, it is a Latin word, roy, it's a French word. So one who rules on behalf of king is called viceroy. So is that clear to all of you? Is that clear to all of you guys? Now, next we have the British military general who came from Britain to suppress the revolt. So, which military general who came from Britain to suppress the revolt? That was General Colin Campbell. So, General Colin Campbell came specially from Britain to suppress the revolt. So, General Colin Campbell was called specially to suppress the revolt and he came from Britain. Next is who was the Mughal emperor during revolt of 1857, because when revolt of 1857 started, the Mughal dynasty was about to get end. So the last Mughal ruler was ruling and he was not the ruler of India. In fact, he was just the ruler of Red Fort Delhi. So during the time of Akbar II, who was father of Bahadur Shah II, you will find that Mughal minting house stopped and the circulation of Mughal coin also ended. So finally, what happened by the time of Akbar II, he was the ruler who became Badshah under with the help of British East India Company. So you will find that by the time revolt of 1857 started, the Mughal dynasty was about to get end. So who was the last Mughal ruler or the Mughal emperor during revolt of 1857? That was Bahadur Shah Zafar, and Bahadur Shah Zafar is also known as Bahadur Shah II. Bahadur Shah, and he was ruling from 1837 till 1850. So he was ruling from 1837 till 1857. That was the time period of Bahadur Shah Zafar or Bahadur Shah II. And Bahadur Shah was also known as Sufi Pir. Was also known as Sufi Pir. Reason was this, Sufi Pir, because reason was this, he was a very great devotee of Nizamuddin Auliya, so he was also known as Sufi Pir. Other than this, guys, what was the symbol of revolt of 1857? So symbol of revolt of 1857 was lotus and chapati. Lotus and chapati, this is also known as kamal and roti. Now, why lotus and chapati were kept as the symbol of revolt of 1857? See, lotus, guys, it is a thing, it is a flower that blossoms on the on pond. So lotus symbolizes city. That is the objective of revolt. Objective of revolt is pure. So the objective of revolt is pure. That symbolizes lotus. And chapati symbolizes involvement of every section of society. Why? Because chapati, guys, it is such a food item which is eaten by everyone, whether rich or poor, everyone eats chapati. So if you want to make this event successful, then there should be participation of all the sections of society. It should not be confronted to the king, to the ruling class only. The normal people, artisan, craftsmen, the normal citizen, normal people, they should also participate. Therefore, to have the mass participation of the people so that this event should become successful, the symbol of this event was kamal and roti, or a kamal or chapati. I hope, guys, is that clear to all of you? I hope it's clear to all of you. Now let's come to the next thing, that is the reason of revolt of 1857. What were the reasons of revolt of 1857? Now, guys, if you inquire the reason of revolt of 1857 and if you were when you were in school, what you have read, so the reason of revolt of 1857, what it was, the thing was, that was the use of grease cartridge. That was the cartridge of the cap of the bullet was made up of fat of cow and pig. So cap of the bullet was made up of fat of cow and pig, and that was the reason to start the revolt. Although this was the reason, but it was not only the reason. So in background of this revolt, there were many such reasons that were running, and that became the ultimate reason for the revolt. So first of all, guys, we will discuss different reasons to start the revolt. First of all is the political cause. So First of all, it is the political reason to start the revolt. Now, what was the political reason? First, the reason was policy of doctrine of lapse that was started by Lord Dalhousie in 1848. So Lord Dalhousie that started this policy in 1848. And what is doctrine of lapse? It was a highly ambitious policy of Lord Dalhousie that just by making a law without fighting any war, he started annexing the Indian territories. So this policy was highly ambitious policy of Lord Dalhousie. Lord Dalhousie, and he was the Governor General from 1848 1856, that without fighting without fighting any war, he annexed Indian kingdoms and merged them in British Empire. So without fighting any war, he annexed Indian kingdoms and merged them in British Empire. Now guys, what was this policy? According to the policy of doctrine of lapse, those states or those Indian states which were formed by British Charter, those Indian states which are formed by British Charter, and if the king dies without natural successor, if the king dies without natural successor, what will happen? If the king dies without natural successor, then the adopted child of that king will not be considered as the successor, and the territory will be merged in British Empire. So according to this policy, if any Indian state which is formed by British Charter, charter means royal order, and the king of that state dies without natural successor means own biological son, then the adopted child will not be considered as the successor, and that territory will be merged in British Empire. So that was the policy of doctrine of lapse. According to this policy, Indian states which were formed by British Charter, if the king dies without natural successor means own biological son, own biological son, because at that point of time only son used to be the next successor, so the daughters, they were not allowed to sit on the throne. So natural successor, then his adopted child will not be considered as the king, and territory will be merged in British Empire. So this was highly ambitious policy of Lord Dalhousie, that without fighting any war, he started annexing the Indian states. Now, through this policy, guys, East India Company annexed states like Satara in 1848, Jaipur and Sambhalpur in 1849, Baghat in 1850, 𝗕cie in 1853, and Nagpur in 1854. So these states, they were annexed by British East India Company without fighting any war. Just they have made a rule and started annexing the kingdom. Now guys, everything was going according to their plan, but the most controversial decision that was taken by British East India Company was annexation of Awadh. So most controversial decision that was taken by British East India Company was annexation of Awadh. Annexation of Awadh. Awadh, guys, why it was the most controversial decision? Reason was this, कि Awadh was considered cherry on cake. Cherry on cake, and it was very fertile region. Very fertile. So British wanted to annex Awadh. So British wanted to annex Awadh. Annex Awadh. Although the ruler of Awadh was Nawab Wajid Ali Shah, although the ruler was Nawab Wajid Ali Shah, and he was pro-British personality. He was pro-British. He was pro-British personality, but then also they wanted to annex Awadh. Now, since the child of Wajid Ali Shah and her wife, that was Begum Hazrat Mahal, so child of Nawab Sahab, Nawab plus his wife, and her name was Begum Hazrat Mahal. And Hazrat Mahal, she was also known as Mehak Pari, was also known as Mehak Pari. So finally, what happened? The child of Nawab Sahab and Hazrat Mahal, that was 𝗕ciecie𝗂𝗍𝘀𝗀. 𝗕ciecie𝗂𝗍𝘀. So that was 𝗕ciecie𝗂𝗍𝘀 was the son of Nawab Wajid Ali Shah and Hazrat Mahal. So you will find that when Nawab Sahab has son, his own biological son, 𝗕ciecie𝗂𝗍𝘀, so at that point of time you will find that the policy of doctrine of lapse will not be applicable. So the policy is not applicable on them. So what they did, so what British East India Company did, British East India Company just British East India Company, what they did, they falsely allegated, they put false allegation of maladministration. They put false allegation. They put false allegation of maladministration. They put false allegation of maladministration and annexed Awadh. And annexed. So they put false allegation of maladministration. That means bad administration. They put the false allegation of bad administration, and finally what they did, they annexed Awadh. So they put false allegation of maladministration, and they started saying that Awadh was not handled properly by Nawab Sahab and there was too much chaos in Awadh. So the people of Awadh, they requested British East India Company to take over the administration from Nawab so that they should have a better administrative choice. So due to the popular demand of the people of Awadh, what British East India Company did, British East India Company took the charge of Awadh from Nawab Sahab, and Nawab Sahab was removed and was deported to Calcutta. So what happened, guys, after this? Nawab Sahab was removed and was deported to Calcutta. So he was removed and was deported to Calcutta, and the maximum soldiers, around 75% soldiers in British East India Company, they belong to Awadh. So the soldiers of British East India Company were not also happy, because that was a completely fake allegation that was put on Nawab, that the people of Awadh, they are dissatisfied with the administration. And finally, guys, Nawab Sahab was removed and was deported to Calcutta, and this was the most controversial decision which was taken by British East India Company. And why it was most controversial? Because the policy of doctrine of lapse was not applicable on them, and they just want to annex Awadh by any means because of the fertility of the region. And the British authorities, they used to say that Awadh is like cherry on the cake. So it is necessary for them to annex Awadh. Therefore, they created such a fake plot to annex Awadh as soon as possible. So this was the main political reason behind the revolt of 1857. It was the main political reason behind revolt of 1857. Is that clear to all, guys? Then do let me know. Is that clear to all? I hope guys, is that clear to all of you? Okay. Now guys, let's come to the next thing, that is next reason, that is the industrial reason of revolt of 1857. So now let's discuss the industrial reason of revolt of 1857. Now see what happened in England. Industrial revolution started. Industrial revolution started. And it is said that started. It is said that it started in England, guys, industrial revolution that started in 1760. And when this industrial revolution started, you will find that the goods were made of made up of machine. So goods were made up of machine, and the machine made goods, they were dumped in Indian market. So India was marketplace for those products. So finally, the British government dumped the machine-made products that was being manufactured during the Industrial Revolution in India. And this machine-made products, they were cheaper in price. Now in India, what was the situation? And in India, guys, what was the situation? Indian products, maximum Indian products, they were handmade. And since the products they were handmade, they were costlier in price. As compared to machine. They were costlier in price. Now guys, what happened? When the British products, they were dumped in Indian market, they were cheaper in price, and Indian products, they were handmade, due to which they were costlier in price. So what will happen, since the Indian population, what they started purchasing? So the people of India, so the Indian population started purchasing machine-made goods. And handmade goods remained unsold. And handmade goods remain unsold. And and when they remain unsold, guys, what will happen? So what happened, guys? What happened is the local artisan and craftsmen, they became unemployed. And once they became unemployed, guys, what will happen? Okay, so the level of frustration and anger, that started in the minds of Indian artisan and craftsmen, and that finally converted into revolt of 1857. So the level of anger and frustration started getting in Indians, and what happened after this level of frustration that started in the mind of Indians, what happened that ultimately converted into the revolt of 1857. So you will find that I have discussed due to industrial revolution, British goods, they were forcefully dumped in Indian market, and British goods, they were machine made, and due to which they were cheaper in price, whereas Indian goods, they were handmade, due to which they were costlier in price. So once the machine made goods So when the machine made goods, guys, entered Indian market, they they removed the Indian goods which were handmade, and due to which they were costlier in price. So what happened the local artisan and craftsmen of India, they became unemployed, and the main reason of their unemployment was the use of British goods. and that created frustration and anger in minds of Indian artisan and craftsmen, and that eventually converted into revolt of 1857. Is that clear to all of you? Is that clear to all of you? Is that clear to all guys? Okay. Now let's come to the next thing, that is the socio-religious cause. Socio-religious cause, guys, what was the reason of socio-religious cause? First of all, you will find that when the British East India Company, when they started ruling India, so you will find that when British East India Company started ruling in India, at that point of time, at that point of time, you will find that the Indian society, many social evils were practiced. Many social evils were in practice, like sati system, child marriage, then polygamy, widow remarriage. Widow remarriage was not allowed. So many social levels they were in practice. Now see what happened when the British East India Company came. They started making laws. They started making laws to eradicate the social levels. So British East India Company, they started making laws to eradicate social levels. Like you will find that the abolition of sati system started in 1829 with the effort of Lord William Bentinck, of Lord William Bentinck and Raja Ram Mohan Roy. Then Widow Remarriage Act was passed in 1856. So guys, Widow Remarriage Act, whenever we read about Widow Remarriage Act, two things you should remember. So Widow Remarriage Act was passed during the time of Lord Dalhousie and implemented during the time of Lord Canning. Was implemented during the time of Lord Canning 1856, and that was due to the effort of Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar. Then child marriage was prohibited, and you will find that these type of social evils they were prohibited by making laws. Now, when this type of activity was being did by British East India Company, the Orthodox Hindus and Muslims they did not like this activities. Reason was this, because they used to say that this type of activities and these type of things they are mentioned in their religious literatures. So, this is an undue interference of the British East India Company in their socio-religious matter. So, this type of reforms was welcomed, not welcomed by Orthodox Jews and Muslims, because they knew that this type of reforms, because these activities they were mentioned, according to them, they were mentioned in their religious literature, because they are mentioned in their religious literature. And when this type of activity was done, it was taken as undue interference of British in their socio-religious matter. So that was being taken as undue interference in the matter of the Indians, especially in the socio-religious matter. Therefore, the people, the Orthodox Hindus and Muslims, they were dissatisfied with these type of reforms. And when they were dissatisfied and British continued to bring this type of reforms to eradicate the social evils, so finally that created a sense of frustration in the minds of the Orthodox Hindus and Muslims, because they started thinking that these reforms are aimed to convert them into Christianity. Therefore, this type of reforms is being practiced. And finally, that this anger led to the, or finally this frustration that led to the revolt of 1857, and that developed into anger, and that led to revolt of 1850. So is that clear to all guys about the socio-religious factor which was responsible for revolt of 1857? And other than this guys, there was one more act that was being responsible, that is called Lex Loci. Lex Loci Act. And according to this act, if any Hindus or Muslim, they accept Christianity, if any person of other religion, they adopt Christianity, then still they will get share, then still they will get their share, in their paternal property. Still they will get their share in paternal property. So this Lex Loci Act also added fuel to the fire, because earlier what used to happen, if a person they convert themselves in different religion, then they were barred from their paternal property. And according to the Lex Loci Act, if a person adopt any other religion, then still he is eligible for the share in their paternal property. So this Lex Loci Act was also responsible, that added fuel to the fire, and that led to the revolt of 1857. And this led to revolt of 1857. Now next we have military reasons. So next let's discuss military reasons. Now guys, if I talk about military reasons, what were the military reasons of this revolt? See, what happened, my dear learners? Okay, General Services Act. General Services Enlistment Act 1856 was passed. 56 was passed. And according to this act, you will find that the British authorities can order the soldiers go anywhere around the world, serve the British serve British East India Company. So it is said that according to General Services Enlistment Act 1856, the British authorities can give order to any Indian soldiers to go anywhere around the world to serve the British Empire. That means for war purpose or for any other purpose, the Indian soldiers can be deployed in any part of the world to serve the British East India Company. Now, when this thing was being did, especially guys, there was chaos in the Hindu society. So when this act was being there, so there was chaos in Hindu society. in Hindu society. Why there was chaos, guys? And if you will see the model of the British Army, if you will see the model of British Army, you will find that there were soldiers and there were officers. Soldiers, there were Indians plus British, and officers were only British. Officers were only British. And Indian soldiers comprises of Hindus and Muslims. Then now, guys, especially the Hindus, the soldiers who were serving in British East India Company, who were Hindus, they refused to go to cross the sea. They refused. They refused to cross the sea. And why they refused to cross the sea? Because of their religious reason. If any Hindu person crosses the sea, then that person outcast from their society, and to re-enter in society they have to organize a big religious event. That was a very expensive one, so they have to organize a big religious event, and that was an expensive one. So you will find that, my dear learners, if the Hindu soldiers, they did not wanted to cross the sea, but through General Services Enlistment Act they can be ordered to cross the sea, and due to which the Hindu soldiers, they became dissatisfied. So what happened, guys, especially the Indian soldiers, especially the Hindus, they were forced to cross the sea, and once they cross the sea, they will get outcast from their society, and just to re-enter in their society, they have to organize a big religious event which was highly expensive. So the Hindu soldiers, they were not interested in crossing the sea, but they were forced. So Hindu soldiers became dissatisfied. So Hindu soldiers, they became dissatisfied. Other than this, guys, there was prohibition to use their religious symbols, and it was for Muslims and Hindus. It was for Muslims and Hindus. Muslims and Hindus. So they were not allowed to carry their religious symbol. For example, the Hindu soldiers, they used to wear earrings. That was a religious symbol. So the Hindu soldiers, they were not allowed to wear earrings. They were not allowed to wear earrings. Other than this, they were not allowed to wear tilak. And the Muslim soldiers, they were not allowed to keep beard, that is called sunnat for them. So finally the Hindus and Muslim soldiers, they became dissatisfied why they are not allowed to wear religious symbol, and they were thinking that the objective of British for not allowing them to wear their religious symbol is to convert them in Christianity. Other than this, guys, there was regular torture of Indian soldiers by British officers, calling them nigger. Nigger means black person. So the British officers, they used to humiliate the Indian soldiers by calling them nigger. Other than this, guys, there was less opportunity for promotion and salary increment. So it is said that an Indian soldier maximum can reach up to rank of Subedar. And there was less salary as compared to the British soldiers, and they were given less salary as compared to British soldiers. And the Christian missionaries, they were allowed to visit the cantonment area, and they used to preach their religion. And other than this, the Christian missionaries, they were allowed to visit the cantonment areas their religion, to preach their religion. So the Hindu soldiers and Muslim soldiers, that is the Indian soldiers, that they thought that this is a step for them to convert in Christianity. So they thought that this is a step to convert Indian soldiers to Christianity. This is the step to convert Indian soldiers into Christianity. So the people, they were dissatisfied with them. So the people, they were dissatisfied with this activity. Now guys, when this thing was being did, so the Indian soldiers, especially the Hindus and Muslims, they became religiously unsafe, and also they were very much reluctant to serve the British army, and due to which a sense of frustration developed in them, and that led to the revolt of 1857. Now guys, let's discuss the immediate cause that led to the revolt of 1857. So what was the immediate cause? Immediate cause was the use of grease cartridge. Use of the grease cartridge. Now guys, what happened? There was weapon advancement. There was weapon advancement or weapon upgradation. Weapon upgradation in British East India Company. And weapon upgradation, what happened? Earlier brown base rifle was used. Earlier brown base rifle was used, and now it was replaced by Enfield rifle. Now it was replaced by Enfield rifle. And Enfield rifle, you will find that it has long range and less recoiling. So it has long range as compared to the brown base rifle and has less recoiling. So what used to happen? Okay, brown base rifle was replaced by Enfield rifle, and to load Enfield rifle, the cap of bullet has to cut through mouth, and then gun was loaded. So cap of the bullet was cut through mouth, and then gun was loaded. And then it was being then the news spread that the cap of the bullet, it is made up cap of bullet is made up fat of cow and pig. Fat of cow and. So guys, when this news was being spread that the cap of bullet is made up of fat of cow and pig, so that this is a step of the British East India Company to convert the Hindus and Muslim soldiers into Christianity. So cow is pious animal, for Hindu, and pig is prohibited animal for Muslims. So finally guys, what happened? The Hindus and Muslim soldiers, they refused to use this weapon, and the revolt started. So Hindus and Muslim soldiers, they refused to use this weapon, and finally the revolt started. So Hindus and Muslim soldiers refused to, and soldiers, they the weapon and the revolt began. So Hindus and Muslim soldiers, they refused to use the weapon, and revolt started. And the revolt started. So I hope guys, is that clear to all of you how the revolt of 1857 started? So that was due to the use of grease cartridge. Is that clear? Is that clear? Okay. Now let's come to the revolt, starting of this revolt. So starting of the revolt, what happened on 29th March 1857, the soldier of a 34 Bengal native infantry, that was Mangal Pandey, he killed British officer Lieutenant Bob and Sergeant Hughes. So soldier of 34 Bengal native infantry that was being stationed in Barakpur, that was in station in Barakpur. Barakpur, guys, it is in West Bengal. And the soldier of 34 Bengal native infantry, that was Mangal Pandey, he started this revolt and he killed the British officer Lieutenant Bob and Sergeant Hurrison. Now guys, what happened ki when Mangal Pandey was arrested? Now Mangal Pandey was arrested and faced court martial. Faced court martial. So court martial was conducted and on 8th April 1857, Mangal Pandey was hanged and he was hanged in Barakpur. On 8th April, he was hanged. On 10th May, my dear learners, the soldiers of Meerut cantonment revolted and the hanging of Mangal Pandey that spread like a fire in the jungle. And finally, on 10th of the May 1857, the soldiers of Meerut cantonment revolted and they marched towards Delhi. And they marched towards Delhi. And they marched towards Delhi, my dear learners. Now guys, it is said that they reached Delhi by 10th of the night, and what they did, so they started attacking the British establishment that was in Delhi, and especially in the areas of Daryaganj. They did mass massacre of the British officers, British families were there. So they started killing the British personnel in the area of Daryaganj. Now guys, by 11th of the May, they reached Red Fort in Delhi, and at that point of time, Bahadur Shah Zafar was declared Shahenshah-e-Hind. Now guys, see how he became Shahenshah-e-Hind. Actually, this news of this incident went to Bahadur Shah Zafar and Bahadur Shah Zafar became panicked. He thought that at that point of time his age was 83 years old. So he was 83 years old person. So he thought that why these revolutionaries are doing this. So he thought that they might kill him also. So what he did, he just closed the gate. He said to his people, to his servants, to close the gate of Red Fort so that they should not enter. Now when his wife Begum Jinat Mahal heard that, and then she tried to understand the whole scenario. So she said that they are not going to harm us, so they are against the British rule. They are not against us. So finally, what happened? Begum Jinat Mahal, she was wife of Bahadur Shah Zafar. Bahadur Shah Zafar, she opened the gate. Opened the gate of Red Fort. Opened the gate of Red Fort, my dear learners, and then the revoltees came inside and they said that we want to revolt under political leadership of Bahadur Shah Zafar. So they said that to revolt under the political leadership of Bahadur Shah Zafar. Bahadur Shah Zafar, guys, he was declared Shahenshah-e-Hind. Shahenshah-e-Hind means Emperor of India. Was declared Shahenshah-e-Hind, that means Emperor of India. Now guys, on 8th July 1858, so on 8th July 1858, after 14 months of the outbreak, after 14 months of the revolt, outbreak at Meerut. So outbreak at Meerut around, that was started in 10th May So 1857, and on 8th July 1858, after 14 months of the outbreak of the revolt, peace was finally proclaimed by Lord Canning. So Lord Canning said that now finally the peace it is being proclaimed and revolt is successfully suppressed. And is successfully revolt is successfully suppressed. So revolt is successfully suppressed, guys. So the revolt is successfully suppressed. So it is almost around 14 month. It is almost around 14 month. So almost around 14 month. It is not 100% 14 months. So it is just 2 days after. 2 days after 14 month could have completed. So it was just around 14 months. So 2 days less than 14 month it was there. So it was 2 days less than 14 month, and finally the revolt was suppressed. Is that clear to all of you guys? Now, so this is how the revolt started and ended. Now let's come to the important centers of the revolt and who were the leaders. First of all, the important center was Barakpur. Barakpur, guys, it is in West Bengal. West Bengal, Barakpur, and it was Mangal Pandey who led this revolt. Then you have Delhi. Delhi, we have Bahadur Shah Zafar and Bakht Khan. Bakht Khan, guys, he was military commander. He was military commander of Bahadur Shah Zafar. Bahadur Shah II was military commander of Bahadur Shah II or Bahadur Shah Zafar. Next you have Kanpur. Next you have Kanpur, that was being led by Nana Sahib, who was the last Peshwa, and Tatya Tope. Tatya Tope was his military commander. Then you have Lucknow. Lucknow, that was Begum Hazrat Mahal plus Birjis Qadir. Plus Birjis Qadir, who was his son. Next we have Jhansi. Next we have Jhansi, that was being led by Rani Lakshmi Bai. Next we have Bareilly, that was being led by Khan Bahadur Khan. Next we have Patna. Patna, that was being led by Maulvi Peer Ali. Next we have Jagdishpur. Jagdishpur, guys, it is the Bhojpur district of Bihar. So it is Bhojpur district of Bihar, and it was being led by Kunwar Singh. Kunwar Singh was Zamindar of Jagdishpur. Then we have Allahabad and Banaras, that was being led by Liaquat Ali. Then Faizabad, that is the Ayodhya area, that was being led by Maulvi Ahmadullah. Then Bagpat. Bagpat, it is near Delhi, that is in UP. Bagpat, it is a district in UP near Delhi, and that was being led by Shahmal. And then we have Gwalior. Gwalior, that is in Madhya Pradesh, that was being led by Tatya Tope. So these are the important centers of the revolt, and these were the leaders who gave the leadership to the revolt. So these are the leaders who gave the leadership to this revolt. I hope, guys, is that clear to all? Next we are going to discuss what was the reason for the failure of revolt. Now, as I have told you, on 8th July 1848, finally, after the outbreak of Meerut, Lord Canning declared that now revolt is successfully suppressed and peace was proclaimed. So what was the reason for the failure of revolt? Now we all know on 8th July 1848, finally the peace was being proclaimed by Lord Canning, and Lord Canning said that after around 14 months of the outbreak of the revolt from Meerut, now we have restored the peace. So what were the reasons of the failure? First reason was that the revolt was not all India in nature, so it was only restricted to North India. It was only restricted to North India. No traces of revolt in South. No traces of revolt. Then we have कि only those Nawabs and kings they supported the revolt whose pension was stopped. So only those Nawab and king they supported the revolt whose pension was stopped by British East India Company. The reason was this, because they wanted that if the pension will be restored, then we will get back our old glory, and if the revolt become, and if it may be possible that the British authorities, due to the fear of the revolt, they will restart their pension. Next is that there was no proper use of coordination and planning. So the revolt was completely planless. So whenever, in whatever situation the revoltees they found, they started the revolt. Next we have use of old weapons. So use of old weapons, and British East India Company, they have modern weapons. They have modern weapons. Other than this, guys, the educated middle class they did not supported the revolt. So educated middle class they did not supported the revolt. Why? Because you will find that the British government started a series of, they started many, you can say, the good practices in India. They started the series of reformation. So British East India Company, guys, they started series of reforms. Like in 1857, example, let me give you. In 1857, they started 3 universities: Calcutta, Bombay, and Madras University. Other than they did social reforms, they did judicial reforms, they did social reforms, political reforms. So different type of reforms were also introduced. Now these type of reforms, according to the educated middle class, these reforms were needed for betterment of Indian society. This type of reforms was needed for betterment of Indian society. Ki once the Indian society will become better place to live, therefore these reforms are necessary. So when Indian society will become better place to live, therefore this type of reforms are necessary. And one, if the British East India Company or the British government, they are thrown out from India, what will be the process? What will happen? So again India will go back to the primitive time. So again the India will go back to the primitive time. Therefore guys, this type of reforms is necessary. Therefore you will find that in the educated middle class they did not supported the revolt. Therefore the educated middle class they never supported this revolt, and finally the revolt failed. Now guys, I will be discussing with you ki what happened after revolt of 1857. Now guys, after revolt of 1857, there was too much chaos, and then that was being handled properly. And after this, Government of India Act 1858 was being passed. Government of India Act 1858 is being passed, and this is known as Allahabad Declaration, because it was read by Lord Canning on behalf of Victoria. And this is also known as Act of Good Governance. And it was read by Lord Canning and in Allahabad. That was in Minto Park, Allahabad. Therefore, it is called Act of Good Governance. Act of Good Governance. Now, what are the major things? First of all, guys, for this, Allahabad was declared capital of India for one day. So, for this event, Allahabad was declared capital of India for one day. So, what were the important features of this act? First of all, the rule of British East India Company will end. So, the rule of British East India Company ended and power transferred to British Crown, and Queen Victoria became Empress of India. So, Queen Victoria became Empress of India. Next is कि Governor General will be now known as Viceroy. So, the Governor General will now known as Viceroy, and first Viceroy became Lord Canning. Lord Canning. Next, we have creation of the post of Secretary of India. Secretary of India, the setting of Secretary of India will be in London and the expense will go from India. And the first Secretary of India was Lord Stanley. First Secretary of India, this was Lord Stanley. Then policy of doctrine of lapse was withdrawn. So it was withdrawn in year 1858, and you will find that ki now the adopted child was considered as the next successor. Now adopted child of the rulers, they were accepted as their successor. Their successor. So adopted child of the rulers, they were considered as their successors, and there was restructure of the British Army and introduction of the martial race. Now there was restructure of the British Army because according to the Britishers, the Hindus and Muslims, they were major culprit of this revolt. So finally what happened, my dear learners? Introduction of the martial race. Martial race means like Jat, Sikh, Gorkhas, they were introduced in army. Produced in Indian Army, British Indian Army. So they were being introduced in British Indian Army. So is that clear to all of you guys? Then do let me know. Is that clear to all? So guys, here we discussed about the revolt of 1857 and what was the reason, what was the objective, what was the impact, and why the revolt failed, and other than this, the Government of India Act 1858. So that was all for the today. Let's meet in the next session.